First of all, tell me, well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was astonishing, big surprise, and I am over the moon about it. It was wonderful.
Tell me what led to this, your background, so to speak.
Well, I think two pieces of work that I did over the years. One was back in the 1980s on the acid rain issue, which was a big U.S. Canada issue. Acidified smoke from Canada drifting into the U.S. and falling out and killing lakes and forests, and the same happening from the U.S. to Canada. And our problem originating in the U.S. was worse than theirs from us. So we had to, a group of us decided to set up an office in Washington and lobby for clean air legislation that would fix the problem. And it took us 10 years to get that. Ronald Reagan was in office for much of that time, so it was very hard to do much there. But we did a lot at the state level, and we did a lot at the provincial level, especially here in Ontario. And finally, in 1990, we got the Clean Air Law signed in the U.S., and as a result, now acid rain is, I guess, a shadow of what it used to be, thanks to that legislation.
Tell me about that for a minute, because again, just a curiosity from myself. Was it hard to battle then? Were people listening then?
People were listening. It was hard to battle, but hard to battle in a traditional way. And what I mean by that is Republicans were conservative, Democrats were more liberal, but they had policies, they had philosophy. One could agree or disagree with it, but it was a much more, what do I call it, rational environment, fact-based environment, reality-based environment, which is not at all the case today in Washington. I don't think anybody could get done what we got done in this environment, not because they wouldn't be skillful, but because the environment is so poisoned with half-truths and conspiracy theories and made-up nonsense. So it's very difficult to get anything done in an environment where facts don't matter, where, for example, the U.S. Supreme Court just passed a ruling that it may undermine the ability of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to do any regulation. It's that kind of extreme, severe irrationality that has taken over the U.S. system. So it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get anything done in this environment today.
Through your efforts, through your group effort, through your colleagues, obviously it's a great thing that happened.
Well, we're really proud of it, and we had a lot of friends in the U.S. that helped us. Just to mention one group, we had, well, two groups. One was the Bass Anglers Sportsman Society, and they had a bumper sticker which said, "Acid rain burns my bass," which was great. I ran out of those very quickly up here, and the bass is up here. That's just one little group. And another group, which was really important politically, was the number of American cottagers in Muskoka. And we had, for example, a couple, the man in the family was the chairman of Exxon, and the woman in the family was on the Republican National Committee. So she was very influential with the Republican administration at the time. She had a couple of Republican senators come up here and visit Muskoka to see what Canadians were complaining about. So that was very, very helpful. And there were many others like Mr. and Mrs. Hillman who helped us and were cottagers coming from Pennsylvania and other states, and they'd been coming for years, and they felt like Muskoka was home and they really wanted to protect it. So that was extremely helpful.
The proof is in the pudding, I guess. It's pretty hard to deny. It's pretty hard to defend when you see the research that you and your colleagues did.
Well, research that we did thanks to, oh boy, one of the great research minds in this whole exercise was somebody named Dr. David Schindler, who ran the experimental lakes area up in northwestern Ontario. And what they did in that area was to measure the differences in lake water that was acidified versus not acidified. They would actually divide some of the small lakes in their research area. Half would be acidified, half not, and they'd be able to tell what the differences were and what the damage was on the acidified side. He was a great scientist. He worked for Fisheries and Oceans Canada. He always spoke the truth. Whenever you talked to Dave Schindler, you got the straight goods. He was a wonderful man, can't say enough about him. And there were others like him, but he was at the head of the class. There's no question about it.
Moving on, you got into, I don't want to say you got into tobacco, but I mean, tell us about that story.
Well, I got into it in a fairly straightforward manner. Some folks will be familiar with the Non-Smokers' Rights Association, which has been around a long time. And the head of that was a chap named Gar Mahood, who was one of the very early pioneers in the anti-tobacco movement and the smoke-free movement. And he was very interested in our work just because we were fellow advocates. So he was interested in how we did what we did, and I was interested actually in how he did what he did, because he was in a much more hostile environment with an industry that was after him all the time, trying lawsuits and stealing their garbage and doing all kinds of nefarious things to undermine their work. So Gar had been watching this, and when we wrapped up our coalition after we got the legislation on acid rain, Gar contacted me and said, look, I'm trying to set up a campaign group to get a basic Ontario provincial tobacco control statute making sales to minors illegal and some other things. And would you run this campaign? So it just seemed like a fantastic opportunity. It was quite different from environment, but it was really an interesting opportunity. So I joined, and I was there for about 30 years, and close to 30 years. And we managed to get, for example, bars and restaurants in the old days were, of course, smoking, especially bars. People couldn't imagine a bar without cigarette smoke. And the first municipality to go smoke-free in its bars and restaurants was the region of Waterloo. And Ken Sealing, the chair, was the instrument behind that. Big fights over that. A big fight over a smoke-free bylaw for Toronto, its restaurants and bars, which didn't work the first time around. We couldn't get it done the right way, and it took a while before we could get it done. And then finally, under Mr. McGuinty, we got the Provincial Smoke-Free Ontario Act amended to ban displays behind convenience store counters. You know, you go in now, you just see a wall with some prices on it. You used to see wide open cases of tobacco there. And we got smoke-free restaurants and bars province-wide, and a number of other restrictions, and also some restrictions on vaping, because young people, as everyone knows, are very attracted to vaping, their flavors, and it's cool and all that. So some vaping restrictions are in there now too. So that was a long campaign, piece by piece by piece by piece, but we had the basic statute starting in the mid-90s, the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, or actually it was called the Tobacco Control Act in those days. And it became the Smoke-Free Ontario Act. So Ontario is a much more smoke-free place thanks to that legislation.
Are you a person that never says, when the fight's there, you're in the fight?
I don't. I don't always look at it as a fight. I mean, we've had fights for sure over the years, but in many communities, if you come across as a fighter and an adversarial type of campaigner, you're not going to get very far. And so we've got a situation here in Northumberland County where farmland, which makes up 31% of the landmass in the county, is really under threat. It's under threat on all of Ontario. We've got about 320 acres of farmland disappearing every day in Ontario, and a number of us are working very closely with the Northumberland Federation of Agriculture and other agricultural groups to come up with some kind of strategy that will make it so that the preservation of prime agricultural land becomes a top priority. And some lip service is given to that, some attention is paid to it, but not enough. And so that's something that I think is very important, and that's going to take a lot of negotiating and collegial discussions and maybe an elbow bump or two, but hopefully not, because it's the prime resource. We think of farmers as the agricultural shareholders in Northumberland County, and we think that a number of us think that they need to have much more priority placed on their concerns about preserving their farmland, and that the county needs to to step forward in that regard. So a lot of that discussion is going on now, and here's hoping.
What was it like when you were told about the Order of Canada?
I was initially shocked. Sounds negative. I wasn't shocked exactly, but I was really sort of a bit stunned because I retired from full time work in 2020, and so it had been 4 years, and I hadn't been thinking about that work very much. Occasionally, chatting with some people that I used to work with and so on, but I'd moved on to other things, especially the farmland issue and other issues here in Northumberland. And so it came a bit out of the blue, and to say the least. And I didn't realize that there aren't very many people who get this, so I was extremely privileged and lucky to get it. People, I don't know the system, but it's a very mysterious system run by the Governor General for this, mysterious in the best way. Like, they don't let people influence them inappropriately and so on. So I've heard this over and over again. So I'm delighted. I can't say enough about it. It's made my week, my month, my year, my retirement. It's fabulous. So
Looking forward to September?
September in the sense of the presentation.
Is that when it's the presentation?
We're not sure.
Okay.
We're not sure because I remember the young lady who called me to inform me initially that this was happening said, is this when? She mentioned a date of June 27th, and this was earlier than that, and she said, well, we're not sure because COVID put all our ceremonies back. Because when they announce a group of names, there are more names that are announced than are in each investiture, they call it. So they've sort of gradually backed up. She said sometime within the next year or two. So I'll be delighted to go to Ottawa whenever that happens. I don't care if it's a blizzard. I don't care if it's whatever. We're going for sure.
Just one last thing. I have to correct you because I don't think luck had anything to do with this, with your past and everything. It's congratulations, well deserved, great honor.
Thank you so much.